Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Gene Hackman. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Eugene Allen Hackman was born on January 30, 1930, in San Bernardino, California. He went by the name Gene. When he was young, his family moved around quite a bit. Eventually they ended up in Danville, Illinois. His father, who worked for a local newspaper, left the family when Gene was 13 years old. 3 years later, Gene lied about his age and enlisted in the Marine Corps. He served as a radio operator until he rammed a motorcycle into a tractor. He sustained several injuries during this collision, including a broken right leg. Gene was discharged in 1952 and moved to New York City, where he worked a number of jobs which he described as miserable, like moving furniture, working in a drugstore, and selling candy door to door. Gene decided to study journalism and television production at the University of Illinois, but gave up and moved to Southern California to pursue a career in acting. He joined the Pasadena Playhouse Acting School in 1956, but was not well regarded by the instructors. Gene received the lowest score for his acting ability which had ever been assigned by the school. He and his classmate, Dustin Hoffman, were voted least likely to succeed. The school kicked Gene out after a year. Understanding that he was not a traditionally attractive actor, Gene could have been discouraged, but he did not think that his aesthetic limitation could stop him from achieving fame. He moved back to New York City and took acting roles as he supported himself with various other jobs. One time when he was working at a restaurant, he ran into a former instructor from the Pasadena Playhouse. The instructor told him that his job at the restaurant proved he would not amount to anything. These unkind words and other sources of disapproval only motivated Gene toward success in acting. He landed several theater and television roles, but his career was still not advancing quickly. This would change in 1967 when Gene Hackman appeared in the movie Bonnie and Clyde. This led to an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. This certainly represented a boost for Gene Hackman, but his big break arrived in 1971 when he starred as Jimmy Doyle in The French Connection. This performance led to an Academy Award for Best Actor. Over the next 33 years, Gene would enjoy an incredible career by appearing in about 80 movies. Here are just a few examples. The Poseidon Adventure in 1972, where Gene played a clergyman who tried to escape from a capsized luxury cruise ship. In 1978, Gene transformed into Lex Luthor in Superman. He acted alongside Christopher Reeve. In 1980, he reprised the role for Superman 2. In 1983, Gene was in the war movie Uncommon Valor. He played a basketball coach in the sports drama Hoosiers in 1986. Gene once again returned as the character Lex Luthor for Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. This is an awful movie, but it was not Gene's fault. In 1988, Gene was in the war movie Bat 21 and the crime drama Mississippi Burning. In 1992, he acted alongside Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman in the greatest Western ever made, Unforgiven. He played Little Bill Daggett, a sadistic sheriff who encountered a notorious and conflicted outlaw named William Money. In 1993, Gene was in the legal thriller The Firm. He was in another Western in 1995, The Quick and the Dead. This movie was pretty good, but it was no Unforgiven. Also in 1995, Gene played a grumpy and rigid submarine captain alongside Denzel Washington in the film Crimson Tide. In 1998, Gene took on the role of a paranoid former NSA operative in Enemy of the State. In 2000, he played a coach in the sports comedy movie The Replacements. He was back for another war movie in 2001 with Behind Enemy Lines. Gene was featured in the legal thriller Runaway Jury in 2003, and in 2004, he appeared in his last film, a political satire titled Welcome to Mooseport. Gene retired at this point because he was having trouble with his heart, and he found the movie business to be stressful. As far as romantic endeavors, Gene Hackman married a woman named Faye in 1956. They went on to have 3 children. The marriage ended in 1986 after 30 years. In 1989, Gene met a woman named Betsy Arakawa, and they became romantically involved. She was 31 years younger than him. The couple married in 1991. After Gene retired from Hollywood, he and Betsy moved to a 12-acre compound in New Mexico. He had 2 mansions on Old Sunset Trail in Hyde Park, just northeast of Santa Fe. It appears as though Gene and his wife lived in the northern mansion. Other than occasionally driving to Santa Fe, Gene stayed out of sight. He and his wife lived a reclusive lifestyle. Gene spent his time painting and writing. Money was not a problem. His impressive career resulted in a net worth of $80 million. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On February 26, 2025, at 1:43 p.m., 2 maintenance workers at Gene Hackman's mansion called the police. The workers said they found the front door ajar. Inside the house, they could see 2 dead bodies. When the police arrived at the mansion, they found the bodies of Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy partially mummified. Gene's body was in a mudroom off the kitchen. He was fully clothed, and his sunglasses were next to his body. The police believed that he had suddenly fallen. Betsy's body was on a bathroom floor. There was a bottle of prescription medication on a nearby countertop with pills scattered around it. There were no signs of trauma to the bodies of Gene or Betsy. About 10 to 15 feet away from Betsy's body, there was a dead German Shepherd in a closet. 2 other dogs were found alive. One was in the bathroom where Betsy's body was found, and one was outside the house. The front door of the mansion was open, and there were no signs of forced entry. The structure was examined by the fire department. They did not identify any signs of a carbon monoxide leak or any type of poisoning. At the time I'm making this video, the deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife remain a mystery. They have been ruled suspicious, and the police will continue to investigate. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Gene Hackman had a rough time growing up. His family environment was brutal and chaotic. Gene described his father as a man who took things too far. He saw his share of physical violence at his father's hands. He remembered how, during his father's abandonment of the family, he waved to him from a vehicle as he drove away forever. Gene recalled, quote, "That wave, it was like he was saying, 'Okay, it's all yours. You're on your own, kiddo,'" unquote. Gene's mother was unable or unwilling to restrict her intake of alcohol. In 1962, she died in a fire after passing out while holding a lit cigarette. In a sense, Gene may have thought of himself as abandoned by both his parents. Instead of dwelling on the negative, Gene used his early experiences as a source of inspiration. He implied that his dysfunctional family made him a good actor. Gene was also motivated by the enormous amount of negative feedback he received during the early part of his career. He always wanted to prove his detractors wrong. Their contempt for him and his hatred of them drove him forward. Item number 2. For much of his life, Gene Hackman was considered a rebellious individual who did not respect authority. When he was young, he found himself in trouble a few times. One time he spent the night in jail after stealing candy and a bottle of soda. During his time in the Marines, Gene frequently engaged in physical fights. This led to him being demoted from the rank of corporal. Even after he was an actor, Gene continued getting in fights. Sometimes he would just randomly go to a bar looking for a combat opportunity. In 2001, Gene started a fight with 2 men over a minor traffic collision in West Hollywood, California. On movie sets, his temper tantrums became so notorious, he was referred to as Vesuvius. Despite his love of physical violence, Gene did not like to play violent characters in movies. Initially, he was unhappy playing the sheriff in Unforgiven because the movie was too violent. Item number 3. How did Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy die? As I mentioned, the investigation is still underway. There has been no determination. Let's take a look at the 3 major theories. Theory number 1 is that they died from carbon monoxide poisoning. When this tragedy was first reported, some people thought this theory made sense. It could explain why Gene, Betsy, and one of their dogs died at the same time, especially considering how there were no signs of trauma. As it turns out, it's not clear if they died at the same time. Furthermore, firefighters were not able to find any carbon monoxide leak, and the front door of the house was open. This theory seems unlikely, given the information which is now available. Theory number 2 is that intruders killed the couple. At this point, there is no reason to believe that anybody else was in the mansion. In addition, the bodies did not have any obvious signs of trauma. Theory number 3 involves a source of death closer to home. The origin of this tragedy was Gene, Betsy, or both of them. There are several versions of this theory. For example, one spouse caused both deaths. Both Gene and Betsy entered into an agreement to no longer live. And one spouse died from natural causes, and the other one did not want to be around anymore. This general theory is supported by the lack of trauma and the failure to call 911. I think theory number 3 makes a lot of sense, in particular the version where one died of natural causes and the other one had a dramatic reaction. Perhaps Gene died unexpectedly from the cardiac condition he had for many years. This explains why it appeared as though he had suddenly fallen. When Betsy realized that Gene was dead, she went to the bathroom, retrieved prescription medication, and consumed it. This was an impulsive decision, which explains why pills were scattered on the countertop. This couple had been together for a long time. Maybe Betsy thought that day-to-day life without Gene would be too much to bear. Also, years of being a recluse could have left her cut off from support. Maybe she felt completely alone without Gene. One part that doesn't make sense with this theory is why Betsy failed to make arrangements to care for the dogs. Perhaps her emotions were so strong, she was only thinking about her own pain. Again, this is just a theory. The police will probably be able to figure out exactly what happened as they continue to investigate. Either way, this is a terrible tragedy for Gene Hackman and for his wife. Now moving to my final thoughts. Gene Hackman had sustained significant emotional damage during his younger years. This led to certain lifelong problems. For example, his losing struggle to control his anger. Despite this, Gene was able to convert much of his pain into a positive. When he ran into an obstacle, a critic, negative emotions, a rejection, a failure, or anything painful, he grew stronger and more determined. Everything was interpreted as a sign that he needed to work harder. He needed to be better. His acting skill must improve. He never viewed himself as a star, even during the last part of his career where he was quite famous. But he always believed he could be recognized as a talented performer. His goals were much more realistic than many other actors. A lot of actors want to be a massive star. Throughout his career, Gene always sought out challenging roles. He was fearless, determined, and demanded perfection from himself. Through his many movie roles, Gene proved himself to be talented, versatile, and unforgettable. Having achieved his goal and proven his critics wrong, one might think that Gene would have dwelled on all his accomplishments. But he did not. He said that he was not a sentimental guy. He did not even know where his Oscar statues were. The goal for Gene was to be remembered as a decent actor, a man who tried to portray what was given to him in an honest fashion. He said, quote, "I'm pretty satisfied that I made the right choice when I decided to be an actor. I was lucky to find a few things that I could do well as an actor and that I could look at and say, yeah, that's all right," unquote. In the end, Gene's performances were more than just all right. They were exceptional. Many of his critics focused on how Gene was not physically attractive, but they betrayed their own superficial nature by failing to recognize the talent that he possessed. Gene was able to turn their inaccurate assessment into his motivation for success. Those are my thoughts on the case of Gene Hackman. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.